Is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom the darkest Indy film, and does that make it shit? Is Willie Scott the worst Indy girl? And is Harrison Ford's Indy a little bit of an asshole? That's what we're going to discuss here on this spoiler chat. My name is Maria Lactilla, and I am joined by Film Stories magazine editor Ryan Lambie.
Hello.
And the person who actually makes the magazine happen, John Moore.
Hello.
Hello. Right. Ryan, when did you first see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Oddly, I read it first. In my school library, they had, it was like a souvenir photo book of Temple of Doom. And so I kind of saw it before I saw it. And then it was on TV in, I can't remember what year it was. It was in the late 80s anyway. So I kind of knew what it was about, but I didn't realise how dark and violent it was until I actually watched the full film. And even then, that was the TV version, which was heavily edited for Christmas afternoon, whenever it was.
Afternoon? Who watches Temple of Doom in the afternoon?
It was on a. I don't know, John. Do you remember when it was on telly?
I've been trying to work this out because I definitely remember watching my first experience of Raiders of the Lost Ark would have been a Christmas Day BBC TV showing of it. I would assume it would be, judging by the gap, so that was the Christmas before Temple of Doom came out, so the Christmas of 83 or 84. And then, so I would assume Temple of Doom would have been about 87 on the TV. But yeah, certainly my first experience of Indiana Jones would have been the edited TV version of it. I was 9 when Temple of Doom came out, so I definitely didn't see it in the cinema. I would have had it on VHS pretty much as soon as it was available. So yeah, I reckon I probably first saw Temple of Doom sometime around 1987, I would guess. Would be about right. They would have Raiders of the Lost Ark was like a 5:00 film on Christmas Day. And so Temple of Doom would have been the same thing, but they just would have edited it down and taken out quite a lot of the horror elements of it. But you will be surprised what Steven Spielberg can get away with in terms of horror and television, and certainly in the 80s. It was acceptable in the 80s, as the saying goes. Yeah, so that would have been my first experience of Temple of Doom. Would have almost certainly been watching it on VHS from my local video store. I've been trying to dig back into my memory, and I would say, yeah, 87, 86 or 87, I would have seen it.
I wouldn't have been even alive at that point. I don't ever remember seeing an edited version of this. I'm pretty sure I saw the ripping off the heart just straight away when I was, I don't know, maybe 6 or something, around the same time as I saw like Star Wars and everything else. I just remember always having those really dark elements in it. So you first see the edited version. What happened when you saw the real stuff?
Well, the UK didn't get the totally unedited one until relatively recently, did it? Or something like, was it 2010? It was like a DVD or Blu-ray re-release where they rated it 12. And because originally they cut it for a PG in this country. It was a 12, well, it wasn't a 12A in America. It was a PG in America as well. This was before they bought the PG-13 in. So we didn't get the full heart-ripping scene. Like even what we got was pretty rough for a kid's film. And just tonally, the whole film is just incredibly disturbing in places. I guess we'll get to the kind of like the conception of it and how it came about. But it sort of almost feels like you're seeing the contents of George Lucas's darker recesses here.
It fits very much into the gore video box VHS store sort of aesthetic of the time. It fits very much into that California brand of horror that was around at the time, Poltergeist and these kind of things, and then into the more trashier elements of that. Tonally, that's very much weirdly what's going on with it, along with sort of that Universal monster movie sort of everybody's a zombie sort of thing that's happening in George's mind. I think there's the easy way that this is characterized is that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg weren't in happy places when they made this. And that's the line that George Lucas likes to trot out as well. Is like, I was going through a divorce. I wasn't very happy about it. So therefore Temple of Doom is dark. It's way more complicated than that. There's way more going on. He's simplifying that so he doesn't really have to dig into it too much. And that's fair enough. But I don't think we really want to. You leave that to whatever's going on in George's head. That's fine. I mean, aesthetically, I think it's in conversation with the horror of the time, and possibly what the kind of sort of rent 2 movies from the VHS store, from your local video store, and watch a horror movie on a Saturday night kind of aesthetic. It's in conversation with that a lot, and everything George Lucas does is in conversation with the movies that he likes to consume, and Spielberg as well. So yeah, it makes it. You can say, oh yeah, he's trying to ape Empire Strikes Back. He makes a darker second installment. But again, like Star Wars, there was no trilogy planned. He may have said there was, but there wasn't. He may have played that card to make sure that Spielberg came back and is like, hey, you promised to do 3 because I told you there were 3. But essentially, Temple of Doom is, okay, we're going to make a darker one. It's that's to me what I feel like the horror elements of it are in conversation with that.
But there's horror elements in Raiders. That's the funny thing. He says, oh yeah, we wanted to make a darker one. Raiders isn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. It's a harsh film, especially, the final reel. And even before that, like, the fight with the big strong man around the flying pancake, and gets his face ripped off by the rotor blades. And but then Temple of Doom it's not dark like Empire Strikes Back is dark. Empire Strikes Back, the classic thing is, Empire Strikes Back is darker because that's the dark chapter of the story before you have the triumphant third act.
Thematically dark.
But it's not. This is dark in a kind of psychosexual, kinky way.
And it's graphic.
There's so much like allusions to kind of penetration and bondage and being burnt and strangled and all. Yeah, I watched it again last night, and it's interesting, like, revisiting it every few years. Like, I must have seen it when I was in my single digits still. I watched it again, watched it repeatedly when I was a teenager. I probably haven't seen it for about 10 years, probably since they reissued it on Blu-ray. I remember I saw it then, but to revisit it now in 2025, it's just fascinatingly weird. It's a really, I mean, it's interesting how it's made, because it's kind of sweepings of ideas that they couldn't use in Raiders, isn't it? Like famously, like the minecart sequence. I think the bit where they're jumping out of the plane, like the whole plane thing, they took from Raiders. So they kind of like, they've gathered all these things together, but in it's just a much kind of more cynical, dark kind of view of humanity than, because I mean, Indy's a dark character, isn't he?
There's a lot to be said about the lack of Lawrence, the Kasdan of it all.
Well, he walked away from it, didn't he? He so disliked the story idea that he was kind of like,
I don't know how much of that Kasdan line is in retrospect. I mean, and how much was his genuine opinion. He was off making The Big Chill or whatever he was doing at the time. So probably like, so he's done Empire and he's done Raiders with George Lucas. He's off making his own films now. This is a break to make his own name. And then George comes along, with something that he doesn't necessarily vibe with, and he's just gone. It makes it easy for him to, and in retrospect, he can also go, I didn't like it, because he doesn't have to get into a conversation about the problematic elements of the film, and that's fair enough as well. Kasdan's off, and so there's a lot to be said for that tightrope that he walks, that Kasdan has managed to walk with Harrison Ford, of making him both charming and a dick at the same time. And Harrison Ford lends himself to that, but Han Solo is the perfect sort of synthesis of those two elements that he manages to walk that line so well. He manages to do it again in Indiana Jones, despite when you dig into Indiana Jones, even in Raiders of the Lost Ark, not great. But obviously the move to new writers, I think, and the material makes that line increasingly more difficult line to walk in this one, and I don't think it hits it particularly well. That would be sort of my take on it. So yeah, he goes back to the couple that wrote American Graffiti to do this, Hook and Katz, isn't it? So yeah, so allegedly goes back to them because he has this Indian idea. Their line on it is, we were collecting Indian art, we visited India, we've been to all these places, we knew about the law and the stories of the religions and things like that. So that's why he goes, when Kasdan says, no, thank you, he goes to them, picks up with them, and they turn the script, they begin to turn the script in for Temple of Doom, again, like you said, with some set pieces from Raiders. They've decided that they're going to, they couldn't get into Raiders, but have decided to recycle into this. So yeah, that whole thing, it's like the tonal shift is partly George Lucas and partly the writers, I would say. But yeah, if you dig into like Gloria Katz's work and that couple, so they also do Howard the Duck, and which again has that sort of patina being sexually weird.
Yeah, quite dark. Doesn't bear too much scrutiny.
Which has that same sort of weird vibe about it. I mean, okay, so if you look back at the career of Willard Hook and Gloria Katz, so they've wrote Lucky Lady, they've done American Graffiti, massive hit, wrote that for Lucas. Then they write Lucky Lady, which is sort of a legendary sort of misfire, way over budget, filmed in South America, Gene Hackman movie. Then they come back to do for George Lucas to do Raiders, and then they basically make Best Defense, another legendary nightmare production. He realised they have a bomb, and then edit Eddie Murphy in after the fact to provide comedy scenes. Legendarily problematic production. Howard the Duck, legendarily dodgy, and a bit of a failure. So basically, and in between that, it's like more American Graffiti. But so Gloria Katz's claim is that she wrote 30% of the dialogue for Star Wars. That they were the punch-up people on Star Wars.
Script doctors,
they're obviously like Lucas loyal people, and Lucas is loyal to them as well. But that's fair enough. But so, I mean, talk about picking up a poison chalice, which is a very indie thing. It's like they get Temple of Doom, which Kasdan doesn't want to touch with a barge pole, apparently, and this is what comes out of it.
It's interesting. It's interesting because is there an I'd hate to use this word because people are going to moan at us, but it is a problematic film, Temple of Doom, in lots of different ways and lots of different isms. You know, the Willie Scott character is kind of a pretty sexist creation, to say the least. And certainly a contrast to Marion Ravenwood, who was such a cool heroine and such a great character. And then you get all the other stuff like the plot about the Thuggee cult and colonialism and all this kind of thing, which it just kind of like either hand waves away or seems to tacitly kind of approve of in a sort of way. Is there like a friendlier version of this? Like, could this have been like, could you take the same premise and make it so it was less unpleasant? Like, because I think at one stage they wanted Karen Allen to come back, didn't they?
Yes.
As Marion, and for whatever reason she was off to probably doing something else. She might be doing Starman at the time or something. I don't know.
The line they give, like the line that they give is that they wanted they go prequel, so they don't have to deal with the post Raiders fallout of their relationship. They seem to have some sort of idea of Indy as some sort of James Bond, that every adventure is him with there's a different woman involved, there's a different love interest. They even put him in a tuxedo.
Yeah,
In
that's very
Audition.
James Bond, that whole beginning bit.
They seem to have, and his attitude as well becomes somehow quite Bondish, I think, in this one. And so that seems to be what's going on. Spielberg sort of, there is clips of Spielberg sort of laughing it off as a new adventure, new woman, all this kind of stuff. I think, like, my take on it is, I think everybody can agree, like, it's okay. Indy throwing Nazis into plane propellers, punching them, knocking them off buildings, melting them with the wrath of God. Like, nobody cares. Like, he can be as, like, when you've got Nazis, you can do what you like with them. But you can't.
Common enemy.
But you can't put him into a situation like this and have him be Indiana Jones and have him and have the collateral damage that comes with him being Indiana Jones and it not become sort of like a little bit problematic. It's like every time that they've tried to err away from the Indy versus the Nazis, it starts to falter as a premise because he does just cause so much collateral damage, and he is so callous about it in his own way.
It's easy to overlook how dark the opening of this is. Like we're talking about the very James Bondy nightclub, Club Obi-Wan scene, where he immediately, as soon as he's kind of backed into a kind of negotiating corner, basically pulls a knife or a fork, it's a meat fork, isn't it, on Willie Scott, and basically threatens her. And it's like, okay, so you're basically using an unarmed woman as a human shield, essentially. And it's like, wow, that's quite an introduction. And then it just kind of gets darker from there.
Yeah. And the next thing is like, he's sparing people with kebabs, and
it's totally gratuitous. I'm not against this, by the way. I'm not against gratuitous violence. But can you imagine? Like, I'm a parent now, which I wasn't the last time I saw this. And my daughter is so sensitive to things. Anyway, but I can't imagine taking kids to see this movie, even in 1984, when perhaps, I don't know. I mean, legendarily, this is one of the films that created the PG-13 certificate.
Yes.
So obviously there was a response to, like, you have gone too far this time. This is too much. But it really is. It's a lot.
Yeah, and this is very much, I mean, the Nazis are a common enemy that, history. Yeah, exactly. Everyone hates Nazis. They were a threat to everyone. Whereas this is White Savior, the movie. And I love Temple of Doom. I get very giddy when I watch it again because of those horror elements. But it hasn't aged well. Like even the dinner scene, like chilled monkey brains and bugs. It's like, I really don't think dinners like that ever happened in those parts of the world. But
they couldn't film it in India, could they?
Or China. They didn't want them to film it in China because there was but they wanted to do something with the Great Wall, didn't they? And China was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, they wanted to film a motorbike chase on the Great Wall, and were told no. They went to the Indian government had to sign off all shooting of films in the country. Like, if you wanted to bring a film crew in, so they had problems with obviously bits of it, and they altered things and they changed things. They wanted to use the Emerald Palace. They wanted to use a specific location, which they ended up building as a set anyway. But basically, the sticking point came when the Indian government said you can't apparently use the name Maharaja, and also we want the right to cut out anything that we don't deem sort of acceptable.
That would have been a lot.
There'd probably been a lot left, would there?
Short film.
Go. No, they pulled the plug on it and moved to Sri Lanka. They reduced the foreign shooting and they move it to Sri Lanka. But then the palace exteriors are all built on sound stages in the end. So the scene where all the kids are flowing out and all of that kind of thing at the end, and a lot of it is now matte paintings and sound stages. So, but the issue is there are red flags for the making of this film very early, and the Indian government are going, you can't do that, you can't do that, please don't do that, please don't do this. And if you listen to the documentary on the film, this is all considered to be, they had all these objections. I mean,
why didn't you listen?
You're just making our lives a misery. Oh my God. And it was like, literally, there's the producer there, and he's like, well, you know, the line came when they said we can't. And it was like, but nobody at any point seems to have gone, hang on, are we the bad guys? You know, like, is this an us problem? Everybody seems to be like, well, the Indian government, they just want to tell us what we can put in our films. And it's like, and it seems very sort of like weird that nobody seems to have questioned this like earlier on in the process, or they've just reached that point where they made the film, so now they've got to like excuse it. And it's like people have started to like throw up these things, and so they've had to like say, well, this, that, and the other. But nobody seems to have like hit this as a red flag, or George has just gone through them all. George and Steven Spielberg have just gone through all these red flags and just carried on. And it's like, I think my spin on it, my idea of this is like to go back to the Obi-Wan Club. The very opening scene is anything goes, right? So you've got the dance sequence, anything goes. And Maria knows where I'm going with this. It's like, so anything goes, 1934 song, Cole Porter, part of a musical that he had on Broadway, which is then made into a 1936 film called Anything Goes, with Bing Crosby, in which Bing Crosby spends a not inconsiderable amount of time dressed as a Chinese coolie, running around doing Bing accents and singing, and with a very uncomplimentary, which doesn't age well, Chinese accent. And so that actual song and the whole sequence is based on the final sequence of Anything Goes, which is Ethel Merman singing Shanghai Di Ho, which is pretty much, and does feature like an extended bit of Bing doing mock Chinese accent whilst wearing Chinese costume. And it's kind of, the whole of Temple of Doom has that very sort of Hays Code era casual racism to it. And I'm sure to Steven Spielberg and George Lucas in 1984, it's just them revisiting films that they have enjoyed as kids or remember vaguely, or have, as they become film buffs through the years, have come across and bought in. But they've bought with it the same dodgy attitudes that permeate all through those films, and they see it as like the golden age of cinema. Whereas now, and they are still living in and you've got to bear in mind. I mean, me and Ryan bring up Gone with the Wind quite a lot, but you're thinking they are still living in a time where there are where Gone with the Wind is considered as the exemplar of American cinema, and is quite, they're still celebrating it. John Wayne's still alive. All this stuff. It's like John Wayne is still like threatening to burn down the Oscar ceremony because a Native American like gets up on stage and wants to say something. So it's like it's a difficult thing it's a difficult line to tread. They don't do it very well in this. It's not aged well, but to say it was a different time is not a lie.
No,
but it's also they've bought the worst of that with them while they're trying to bring the best.
I think it's the product of filmmakers as well that have created something. Like, I think the script was written in a hurry, which probably didn't help. That it was all kind of rushed through quite quickly because they wanted to get Steven Spielberg before he moved on to another project. But I think it's the product of filmmakers that aren't analysing themselves in the way that perhaps artists and filmmakers do now. If you know what I mean, you sort of like you go back through your work and you take on feedback and you think, yeah, you're right. It is a bit strange to have so many children being harmed and frightened in a family film. Yeah, that is kind of strange. Now you point it out. There's none of that. It's just kind of like this is our big rip roaring adventure. This is, sure, it's dark, but it's it's just a bit of fun. And so it's, it then falls to later generations like us looking at it in 2025 and going, wow, this almost, if you recited this to your psychoanalyst, they'd be like, yeah, I think you're having a few problems there, George. But I mean, from a technical standpoint, though, this is, you can't overlook the fact that an immense amount of effort and love and work went into this. Like right from that opening shot, the Busby Berkeley number. Like I hadn't appreciated the last time I saw it, but that is an effects shot where Woody Scott's like singing directly to the camera, and you've got the Temple of Doom title. It's behind her, so that must be a composite shot where obviously they filmed her against the green screen. They, and then they've optically printed the other dancers behind her. So to go through,
or they rotoscoped her
well,
out.
imagine rotoing her hair though. She's got all the big blonde perm. So the amount of care and effort it would have taken to do just a shot like that, which nobody would even have noticed, and the Minecraft sequence you mentioned earlier, like some, not all of them, but some of the shots in that are so good you'd never know they were miniatures. I didn't know for years that wasn't like a full scale set they built. Obviously, they built little bits of it, but those wide shots of the cart zooming around and everything are all kind of miniatures and puppets and things like that.
Yeah. So, Spielberg's in between E.T. and
The Colour Purple.
Amazing Stories and The Colour Purple.
And he did the segment of the ill-fated Twilight
Zone,
which
has been memory hold for obvious reasons.
Don't
know what you
John
mean.
Landis.
I mean, you can see, George has saved Spielberg from 1941, which had caused him trouble. So Raiders has put Spielberg back on the up and up again after the question marks surrounding 1941. So you can see why Spielberg probably wants to come back and do him a favor, but doesn't necessarily want to do another indie movie straight away. So he's done. He's on the back of E.T. and he's probably prepping Amazing Stories at the time, or whatever's going to happen with that. So I mean, it was. I think when Kasdan sort of dives out, they step in and they have to get it moving quite quickly, don't they? And everything is like straight into pre-production and getting it moving. I think that's why the sort of Spielberg literally talked about going to his drawer and pulling out the minecart sequence that they've cut from the script of Raiders. So it's the gong bit from the dance at the start is a borrowed from was cut from Raiders. The raft sequence, everything from where they jump out of the plane onwards was all Raiders. So the falling from the plane in the raft was Raiders, which allegedly because it wasn't very realistic.
Because now it was in this one.
And the minecart, is a Raiders section. They're the bits that they sort of say.
The gong bit is terrific. Number one, the sound design is incredible. Bang, 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 like the different tone, the pitches of the bullet hits. And then as the gong is rotating and Indy's running behind it, you can actually see I don't know how they faked it because it's rotating. They must have it on some sort of rotisserie type thing, like a chicken. And then they've got something that creates the bullet hits in it because you can see the dents. And it's in camera as he's running along. It's like holy Christmas! Again, they didn't have to do that. I mean, it's just fantastic. Conversely,
shout out to the Paramount to gong transition at the start, which is amazing as well.
It's almost like the old Rank logo.
Yeah.
But I have to get the raft bit off my chest because that is just that for me is one of the low points of the film, like technically. Because in what is otherwise a technically amazing film, the shot where the raft comes out of the plane and it's just floating like a bag of crisps, and you can briefly sort of see there's some figures in it, but they're clearly like rag dolls or something. And the whole thing would be very, very hard to sell to an audience. Like you said, it's unrealistic, but they really didn't help themselves with the effects shots. It's clearly done in a bit of a rush, that bit, I think.
Yeah, but that's the weird thing. Like that whole opening sequence is kind of like a little mini Bond film. Is that right? And then the raft sequence takes us to a really silly kind of kids film. And then you get this really kind of disgusting horror film. So you get like 3-4 films in one, and none of them quite gel with each other. And that raft sequence just looks awful. They all should have been splat on the ground, and poor Short Round is probably fucking terrified in there. Like, yeah, but Short Round is a character that I think, like Ryan, I watched it again last night, and I do have to say I have a soft spot for Short Round. I do not have a soft spot for Willie, who is just irritating, isn't she? Like, compared
constantly
to
screaming.
Yeah, and the thing is that she doesn't even change towards the end. She's still really helpless and screaming by the end. It's just that now she's kissing Indy. That's it. She doesn't change.
It never really makes sense why they kind of end up together at the end, even for a brief fling, because there's no real chemistry between them.
No, I find the exchange in the palace as well, like, really excruciating to watch.
God, yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that until last night.
For reasons they don't earn or even like sell you in any kind of discernible way. They both seem to think that like there's something going to happen between them, and they're both annoyed about the fact that you're not talking to me. I was like, I didn't really vibe with I think I've like, to use your phrase, memory hold that whole bit until we went back and
I think it's because it's so painful.
It is maybe really
if they'd been drinking, if they'd established in the scene before that they were drunk, I think you could possibly just about get away with it. But they're just eating apples.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the monkey brains. Clearly, they both got really horny over monkey brains, and then the apples just like, yeah, they just both need a little something, apparently.
Yeah, it's like, it's easy to do the well, Spielberg's again take on it is they auditioned 25 actresses for it. They only showed Harrison Ford one, Kate Capshaw. He immediately went, "Yep, that's her," and that was it.
It's not her fault, though, is it?
Like, it's really set out like, there was no other choice. This was the girl for it. This was the thing, and the easy like story to this is, oh well, Spielberg's in love with Capshaw, which doesn't. But the timelines don't tell that story. The timeline of their relationship is fairly insane, in that he is. Stephen and George are both going through breakups, but he then Spielberg picks up with Amy Irving afterwards. They have children, and then he marries Kate Capshaw about 8 years later or something like that. And it's like, okay,
must have kept in touch on Facebook.
Yeah. George and Marcia Lucas. Yes, George is in that place probably, but doesn't appear that like that this is the story, that it's like some kind of like besotted he's in love with Kate Capshaw kind of thing that's driving all of this. So
I think Kate Capshaw is not the problem. I think she's just a good actor, and you can see in a lot of the scenes, that it's not her performance that's the problem; it's the writing and the character that she's been lumbered with. And it's the stuff around her as well, like the scene where they've just escaped from the club, like they've landed in the back of the car and Short Round's driving, and then Indy's rummaging around in her shirt looking for the antidote to the poison, and it's kind of like it's like something out of like Confessions of a Window Cleaner or something, and Short Round turns around and says, "Oh, no time for love, Dr. Jones," and it's just like, oh, this is just awful. Poor woman, that poor actor. I feel really bad for her.
But Spielberg has never been good, even in something like West Side Story. He's a great director, but he can't really shoot sort of, not even love, but like sexual attraction. I don't think he's very comfortable with it. And I feel free to disagree, but I think where Temple of Doom wants to be in terms of this weird kind of erotic side, I don't think Spielberg or George Lucas, to be fair, knows how to take it there and make it compelling, and maybe then, write and direct both Harrison Ford and Capshaw into kind of performing that. Maybe
it's not part of his toolkit. It's just not. That is not an element of Spielberg's or Lucas's. It's not like George is going to come in and go, "No, hang on, I've got this. I've got you covered, mate. Don't worry." It's like there's like there. It's not. It's really not part. I'm trying to think. Like, Marion is kind of the anomaly. in that.
Well, I think Karen Allen came up with her character, though, didn't she? It's like a lot of those
Which
ideas
is-
and
which is
flourishes to the character she came up with.
It's testament to Karen Allen's performance. It's testament to Lawrence Kasdan's writing. And she is, Marion is the check and balance that makes Indy likable. It is essentially because Indy is likable only in Raiders, only because he has somebody to put him in his place.
Yeah, she humanises him.
Yeah, and challenges him.
She like when he is like the big I am, when he's trying to be like, well, you know, can't believe she's not coming. You know, it's like you do not buy it. It's like because she has the ability to like bring him down and has his number, 100% has his number. Like it allows him to be human, and it also allows him to overcome her fears about him with charm. And so you get to see the charm of the Harrison Ford side. And it's the same, it worked. Harrison Ford's whole character, way of being at this point in his career needs that, or otherwise it edges way, way, way into creepy smarm. And in like Han Solo doesn't work without Leia. Like have absolutely 100% having his number and still not being able to like resist him. That is the chemistry. That is what works about Harrison Ford's star persona at this period. It's like that's the juice of it. And when he's got somebody that is just essentially screaming and needs his help at all times, he becomes something a little bit more creepy, essentially. I think, and I think that's the thing about it, that he does, that Indy as a character struggles to be like Bondish, you know, struggles to be the hero. He has to be the reluctant hero. He can't be the looking for trouble hero. That doesn't suit the Indiana Jones character, I don't think, when you really dig into it.
Well, he's not a person on a mission, is he? He's not an agent like Bond. He's not like he's not sent out or dispatched to do things. Well, he is in Raiders, obviously, but in this one, it's kind of odd because he just falls into the adventure, doesn't he? And just follows the rabbit hole down to the end. It's a bit, Alice in Wonderland in that sense.
The whole fortune and glory thing is the biggest turnoff for me about the whole Raiders. And I know they've gone prequel, so they're trying to think, oh, well, this is his arc. He learns by the time you get to the end of Raiders that it's not about fortune and glory. But, you know, fortune and glory, kid, it's like, that's a massive indie turnoff. That's not what you want to hear from Indiana Jones. It's not about fortune and glory. It's about these things should be preserved for academic purposes. They should be saved for the generations. They should be protected. They should be kept out of the wrong hands. Fortune and glory is unbecoming of Indiana Jones. That's not what you want from that character. In the same way that you want Bond to be solely driven by Queen and country, that's what you want from him, and that's his motivation. You don't buy Indiana Jones's motivation being fortune and glory. It's like it's unbecoming of it.
Do you think this film mislays the humour a little bit of Raiders as well? I think that was. I wonder if that's why it feels as dark as it is, because there's moments of comedy in this, but they feel a bit forced and don't really land. Like we talked about the bedroom scene, and there's the scene where he puts his hands on again. It's like a 70s sex comedy where he puts his hands on the statue's breast and it moves aside. And she's like, "Oh, I'm over here," kind of thing. And there's a bit where like I think is it a shovel or a hammer or something goes up in the air and lands on a guy's head, and it's kind of like it tries to shoot for sort of those sort of comedy moments, the moments of levity from Raiders, but to me they just didn't land somehow. Maybe I'm being uncharitable.
No, I think so. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not a funny film because those moments don't land. And again, a lot of the humor is supposed to come from Willie being completely useless and just screaming, and she can't get them out of the room where the spikes are coming down on them. And
that seems to go on forever, doesn't it, that scene?
Yeah. There's only so much that you can kind of withstand that. But no, it doesn't work, which makes it, like you said, seem even darker. And there's no sort of balance to it. So I can imagine if you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark and you fell in love with Indiana Jones, you're like, great, this is amazing, I want more of this. And then you watch Temple of Doom, I wouldn't blame you if you were completely put off, because it is such a different film. Even though you got, again, Indiana Jones on this amazing adventure, but yeah, it's such a different film. So I know critics didn't really warm up to this, but I don't know, did audiences? What was the kind of the general public's? I know this made a decent amount of money as well, but did people
it's
like
huge,
this?
yeah, because it didn't get quite as much money as Raiders. It was still like globally, it was the biggest film of '84, wasn't it? I think it made something like 330 million or something like that. So it was still huge. But I think probably it seems to me that certainly in America, the reaction seemed to be from parents that it was probably a bit too violent.
I think the vibe shift speaks to the magic trick of Raiders. The balancing of all of the elements that they managed to get so right in Raiders, I think is like this is an example of how it goes wrong when you really like dig into it. But I think on a surface level, all you needed at the time was Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg
on another adventure. Yeah,
that is a cocktail. I will try two of, and it's like, and then the dust settles, and you think, okay, well that's not sort of, that didn't taste how I wanted it to taste. To carry on that metaphor, it's like it got me drunk, but it didn't really taste how I wanted it to. And then you go, and I think it speaks to that you go that far. You get 5 years then before the Last Crusade, which is like they'd say. So Stephen goes off, makes two art house, essentially art movies by his standards, but then comes back to it, and they've obviously they've reset. They've worked out that Indiana Jones almost can't be the alpha of the piece. So they bring Sean Connery in to do Marion's job and basically take him down a peg every time he starts to get too big headed. And it's and basically to remind him that he's not the main guy, and it's and so they get back. What Last Crusade does very well is get back to that same blend of Indy needs to understand that he is he's not the top dog in the almost in the conversation. Indy gets reluctantly pulled along on adventures that he is furiously competent when he's needed to do stuff, but he essentially doesn't want to be involved. And it's so the whole fortune and glory thing, that sort of misreads his energy to such an extent that it's fundamental. It's like an original sin in the movie. It's fundamentally flawed from the start, as far as I'm concerned. It's but at the time, you can see why they're okay, well, we've got to move this up now. We've got to take it up a notch. So Indy's got to drive this adventure, and we don't have Marion. He's got to be this action hero. And that, but the fundamental misreading of that was enough to get audiences into the cinemas to see it. And there's enough good stuff in there to keep them interested. But when you dig into it, it makes it possibly the weakest of the three, certainly. The weakest of the original three, undeniably.
You can see where they try to kind of call back to Raiders or even Star Wars, actually. There's the bit where, again, he fights a big strong man. There's a big scene where, Indy gets really beaten up, and then the strong man dies horribly. In this case, he goes into the kind of stone crusher thing, doesn't he?
Yes.
But it just doesn't land the same way that the first one did. I think for the reasons you mentioned, it's down to character as much as anything, because the conception, the way it's staged and everything, there's nothing wrong with it. And then later there's the shot, or there's the scene where there's two swordsmen this time and not one swordsman, and he goes for the gun, mimicking the I've got the shits bit from Raiders, but he doesn't have the gun on him. And it doesn't quite. It's okay, but it's not. But then it does the Star Wars thing, doesn't it? Where he rushes the bad guys, the thuggy soldiers, and then he sees there's too many of them, and then rushes back again.
Which is over the top of the rocks.
Yeah, which is straight out of off the Death Star, isn't it? So it's in conversation with itself, and it's. But I think, yeah, like I say, yeah, I think for the reasons you outlined, I think for that it gets the characterization of wrong. That none of it really kind of adds up. Like the parts of Raiders, it's more than the sum of its parts, and this doesn't feel that.
And I think, yeah, you have Karen Allen to thank for a disproportionate amount of that, and she does not get the props that she deserves for how good she is in that film. But in terms of Kate Capshaw, it is. You are right. It's not a Kate Capshaw problem. Willie Scott is not her problem. It's fundamentally misguided to a certain extent. I think there's a fundamental. I think essentially there's a fundamental misunderstanding on some level by the writers or by maybe even Spielberg in a hurry as to what made Raiders what it was.
I do wonder, although this is a bit of a conspiracy theory and it's based on sort of half-remembered things I've read, but I do wonder whether Marcia Lucas actually had quite a positive effect on the things that George Lucas made while they were still together. You know, because it feels like there was a definite moment where you had Princess Leia, who was an interesting, tough character that could have just been the princess archetype but wasn't. And then you had Marion Ravenwood, who wasn't just a love interest, but there was something, you know, had extra dimensions to it. And then after, you know, from Temple of Doom onwards, it feels like the female characters, like, 'cause, you know, if you think about the sequel trilogy, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, even, you know, the female characters in that are less interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into with that, but yeah, I think you're essentially the George Lucas and female characters are an interesting thesis.
Difficult topic.
Yeah,
That's a whole video on its own.
It's easy to simplify it. It's difficult to kind of dig into it. I think a lot with George Lucas are high concepts that are excellent high concepts that are sometimes the actual work that needs to go into them to realize them and is not always done to a standard that they deserve. And I think that's the sequel. I think that's the prequel trilogy problem, is that the high concepts that he has are misguided in realization.
I think that's the problem with the Willie Scott character, isn't it? Because it feels like between them all, whoever came up with the idea, is that they looked back at, like you said, Hays Code movies, and they looked at that kind of classic gangster's mole character that was, you know, obsessed with diamonds and gold, constantly complaining about, you know, breaking a nail or whatever, but they don't interrogate it. They just take it and put it in and don't try to deconstruct it or comment on it. Like, you know, like it might have been accidental, but the Princess Leia feels like a commentary on typical princess characters in fairy tales. Do you know what I mean? You know, like she's aware that she is at a space opera. And so, oh, I see. So you've come to rescue me, have you? Couldn't they have sent someone better? That's her attitude. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'll have to do this myself. Is very
exactly right. Into the garbage chute, flyboy.
Yeah. Like, oh God, this is a fairy tale gone wrong. Is like her whole energy in that film, and Marion's like resentment of Indy turning up and saving her at the start of Raiders is also in conversation with that. That's why it's like I didn't need you. I would have been fine. You know, you've got some nerve walking back in here, or whatever the line is. You know, it's like, even though he has been there to help her in a time of need, she doesn't want his help. And it's like, she doesn't want it and she probably doesn't need it. And I think that's the best you can, like, that's the best characterization of Marion. So what does it get right then? What does Temple of Doom get right? Why do we still enjoy it when we watch it? That's
horror.
what I'm interested in. Why do I still get a buzz out of watching it? Why do I still enjoy it when I
Because someone rips a heart out of a man's chest. What more do you want from a film?
Are we solely just suckers for like a really good practical special effect? And do we just sit there going, look at the set they built for that?
It's the spectacle of it. Yeah.
It is spectacle. It is,
yeah,
definitely.
It's spectacle. That's what, especially of those, it's a different kind of spectacle for those adventure movies. But I think that's Temple of Doom and probably Jurassic Park. So, you know, Spielberg is probably who I should be thanking for how much I love horror movies, because it's so you're on the edge of your seat and you don't know whether you should be scared or if you should be like, yes, just keep going, keep ripping that heart out of there. It's fascinating. And the way, I think it looks dated compared to today's visual effects, but I think it still looks kind of cool.
The heart scene is I think it stands up. I think it's for that level of, for what we've discussed it being in conversation with, I think that effect holds up, like the pulling the heart out. They covered the immolated body with flame, don't they? Because they said that the writhing animatronic that they built was too disturbing for Spielberg. Thought it was too disturbing, so they cover it. They basically superimpose fire over the top of it.
Even Spielberg has a line.
yeah.
Too much.
Very much like, guys, I think we might have got a bit too far.
What do you think, lads? But yeah, that set, that whole set is stunning, and like some of the sculptures that they produced, all the kind of Cali and all the other that they find them in the woods beforehand, all those kind of like demonic statues, I find are really cool and well done. And the music as well in the sacrifice scene, John Williams' music there is amazing. It sort of feels like a dry run in retrospect, feels like a dry run for like the Duel of the Fates, that kind of choral chant to it. I think from like I said before, I think from a technical level, they've really put a shift in this film. It's stunning looking, apart from one or two spots, like the dinghy
raft
scene
coming down.
Yeah, I mean, like the bridge scene. I mean, in terms of execution, that's pretty stunning. That must have been an incredibly difficult sequence to get right. I think they found some engineers from some sort of civil engineering company.
There was a dam building project in Sri Lanka. They co-opted the engineers to come across and build the rope bridge for them, because obviously they were getting equipment and men to like weird places in the middle of Sri Lanka. And so they just came in and built them a bridge, apparently. So the story goes.
And even there, like he sneaks in these little horror flourishes that he didn't need to, like the specific way, because crocodiles can't chew. When they bite their prey, they roll over to rend all this flesh apart, and they actually, they show that, and it's just like, yeah, PG.
That's possibly that is possibly the biggest legacy of this film. Then, isn't
crocodiles.
The rating. That's
the rating. I thought our understanding of how crocodiles is
realistic crocodile deaths in movies. Probably like its most enduring legacy.
Yeah, between this and Gremlins, wasn't it? It was like both films that Spielberg had a hand in. And also, it's interesting to compare this to Goonies, because the Goonies came out a year later, didn't it? And it's got the sort of underground traps and temples and falling spike things and Rube Goldberg type traps all kind of feel very much like this, which of course Spielberg also produced.
And Ki Hai Kwan also stars in as well. Shame it never worked out. It took so long for somebody to like find a thing for him to return to the like spotlight with. That feels like his character is another potentially ill-advised thing in this movie.
It could have been worse though, wasn't it? This is a Wikipedia thing that I saw, that apparently it was originally going to be a virginal child bride. A young female character, and they kind of gender flipped it. So we had a lucky escape there. At least.
That was okay. Yeah, sorry. that sounds like a lucky escape. Oh my god. But I remember loving that character when I was a kid, and now looking back at it and questioning but the treatment of him, a treatment of Short Round in the film, again calls into question the whole character of Indy. It's like the fatherly doesn't pass when he's consistently put him in danger and shown no regard for him for like an hour. And has taken him to these places and done these things with him, and he's never thought to park him and just go, "You can't come. This is not advisable." It's like, and so you have all of this, and then so you don't buy the sort of fatherly. It just seems like a blatant disregard of a misguided disregard of like health and safety.
Well, there's the character at the beginning, isn't there, in Club Obi-Wan, where it's so easy to forget it because he's just like dealt with so offhandedly, but he's a sidekick who comes in dressed as the waiter and he's got the gun under the plate, under the tray, and then the champagne corks pop and he's shot. And he's like, "I've been with you on many adventures, Indy." And it's like, come on, he's just kind of like, they don't know each other. Like, you can see just like on Indy's face, it's just kind of like, there's another one gone. That could so easily. That's short round. That's short round in 10 years, isn't it? Like, yeah. That's his ultimate fate.
But yeah, I mean, setting it in 1935 is like, again, it's like, it's just ill-advised. Why not go back like a bit further? And then, then you're telling me like in a year, what you're actually saying to me, if you dig into it, is in a year, Willie's gone, short round's gone, and we're into Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it's like, it doesn't paint Indy in a great light. I don't know if anybody else thinks about it like this, but like when you actually dig into it, it's like just like weird, like misguided missteps that just throw the character into question. And it's just, it's like, it is that very much that thing where it's like, it didn't have to be like that. It didn't have to be that. It wouldn't have taken very much. But then again, they're probably more thinking, well, anything goes. We want to use anything goes. That's 1934. So by the time they've translated it, it's going to be 1935 before it's available in like Chinese or what, whatever language does she? Mandarin is what she sings it in at the start. Is that true?
I think so.
You can imagine them having a conversation about that, but then also not considering what happened to Short Round and Willie Scott in the ensuing year before Raiders starts. That seems a very George Lucas conversation.
Yeah, probably. I think that's a solid place to stop for today. Thank you very much, both Ryan and John. You can find more of our ramblings at filmstories.co.uk and loads more ramblings on our YouTube channel, so hit that subscribe button. Likes are also appreciated, and we'd also love to know what you think of Temple of Doom. Where does it rank in all the Indiana Jones films? So leave us a comment. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.